Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 20th, 2022 business meeting. Madam Treasurer, may we have a roll call?
President Smith,
Present.
Ms. Reinhardt. Present. Mr. Sampson,
Present.
Ms. Wigani,
Present.
Dr. Pickett,
Present.
Dr. Goodwin,
Here.
Mr. Lacy.
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right. Once again, good evening. Appreciate everyone coming out. Before we get into our board business, we have a few special presentations. Dr. Lawley, could you let us know about our presentations, please?
Our first presentation, and I'll ask the board and the treasurer, if you can, to join us in front after our summer graduates process in. We have some graduates that will be receiving their diplomas tonight, and their principals will be presenting them, and we'll be there to also shake their hands and congratulate them on this accomplishment.
Good evening. Board President Smith, Superintendent Lawley, Treasurer Abraha, and board members. It is with great pleasure that I present to you several DPS students who have persevered through tough times, have met their goals, and are now ready to begin the next chapters of their lives. The class of 2022 endured 2 years of interrupted schooling due to the pandemic and navigated ever-changing graduation requirements. Each of these graduates has earned a minimum of 20.5 credits and has met the test requirements set forth by the state of Ohio. We want to take this opportunity to thank the parents and families who have supported and encouraged their children along the way. Graduates, today is the day you begin your new journey. Be bold, be courageous, be kind, and be your best. At this time, we will begin the presentation of diplomas, and I'd like to ask Principal Griffith from Stivers School for the Arts to please come forward, and the board members to come down. You guys have a special cheering section today. At this time, I'd like to introduce our first graduate from Stivers School for the Arts, Jabria Lene Cook. If you would come. You shake hands down here. This way. It's a little hard to do it in this small room. Our next graduate, also from Stiver School for the Arts, is Faith Elizabeth Shaylin Amber Brown. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, Principal Griffith. At this time, would Principal Davis from Ponent's Career Technology Center please come forward? And at this time, we'd like to recognize from Ponent's CTC, Cole Alexander Taylor. Coming down here. All right, thank you. I think the parents would love to have a quick photo with the superintendent and board. So graduates, if you guys want to come forward, we're going to give all three of you one more round of applause. Thank you. Take some pictures, family.
Is there any way the three on the end could come in a little bit? Thank you.
Go in front here. I think we have some.
That's better. All right. All right, I can see everyone. So look at the camera over here. And 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I think we're good. If parents, if you want any photos, you can step up here. All right. Any photos?
So at this time, our graduates and families were welcome to step out in the hall, and we can take some more pictures in the hallway, okay? Thank you, everyone.
It's always a beautiful moment. Thank you, everybody, for allowing us to have that time for that. Dr. Lally, our next presentation, please.
Our next presentation will be from Dayton Children's Hospital. It's related to our student resiliency coordinators and our student behavioral health therapist. And I'd like to introduce Sue Freilich, and I'll let you introduce your team members.
President Smith, Dr. Lawley, and board members, thank you very much for the opportunity to share our program with you tonight. I'm Sue Freilich. I'm the Director of Community Behavioral Health Services for Dayton Children's, and this is Kara Hofacker, and she is one of the managers that are supervising the program. And then we have Libby Charlton, who wasn't able to be with us tonight because her husband's working out of town, and she's babysitting both of her young kids tonight. So we're representing everybody. You have a packet in front of you that has information because some of the slides are really long, and I thought we're not going to read everything, but you might want to reference that as your packet. And please feel free to ask questions or interrupt me or whatever needs to happen. So our Student Resiliency Coordinator Program was developed by Dayton Children's and Dr. Lawley in meeting Dr. John Doobie, Debbie Feldman, in creating a model to work with the kids in Dayton Public School that are a little bit of the more challenging kids with emotions and behaviors. We modeled the program off of the, you can turn, thank you. We modeled the program off of the Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg's Building Resiliency in Youth and Teens, Giving Kids Roots and Giving Them Wings. So that's sort of been our motto that we are doing. Kids that are in the SRC program usually need long-term therapy, and so we are also the bridge to be able to help the communication happen between the therapy program that's outside of the school and what's happening inside of the school. So examples would be helping a child use coping skills, which is one of the C's, to be able to make it work in the classroom. Because what the therapist may help the family or child do, and then how it actually gets operationalized in the classroom is not easy for kids to do. They have other kids that might be, what should I say, pestering them a little bit. They might have kids that might make fun of them. They might be afraid to speak up. They might get distracted on purpose to avoid being noticed that they're not very good at math. So they want to be able to have the attention on their behavior rather than on what they can't do. So we're there to be that bridge. We also can work with the teachers and the teaching staff daily to be able to come up with skills that the kids can use in their classroom, which has been really fruitful, and we have some stories to share at the end of the presentation. We also work to develop confidence, competence, their character, having them feel like they have a contribution that they can make in the school or in the community. So we build on the kids' strengths. This program is not designed to be able to diagnose a child. I'm doing a lot of sorry. This program's not there to diagnose the kids and work on their mental health diagnosis. The program is there to instill these strengths, build the character, build their confidence so that they can excel. Does that make sense? I see head shaking. We have a gatekeeper in all of the schools. Referrals come from teachers, intervention specialists. They all make referrals, school nurse, counselors in the school, the guidance counselors. The gatekeeper then meets with one of our managers that is assigned to that school, and when they make the decision together to be able to work with a child, most of them are all put into the program. We're learning, it's a new program, so we're not there being super selective, and so we're trying to be able to help unless a child already has someone helping them in terms of a caseworker, social worker outside, and it would be a duplication of services. We need permission from the parents in order to do the work we're doing. So we do have to have consent. We have had some situations this year where it's hard to get the consent. The SROs help us a lot in doing school visits. The principals help us a lot in being able to say, here's how you can help get a consent, or be able to have the parent come in and help rubber stamp us for trust so that the family would feel comfortable working with us. The school-based therapy program is brand new in Dayton Public, so the student resiliency coordinator, we're on our 3rd year, starting this school year. The therapy program is just 1 year old, and so we developed a cognitive behavioral therapy approach, not developed, but accepted that approach, and it's based on the Beck Institute work. So we are working on changing a child's thinking patterns. So it's based on thinking, behavior, and emotion. If we just concentrate on changing behaviors and how they're viewing what is happening doesn't change, then it's more of a Band-Aid in what is happening in the school. So we work on changing their thinking. It's challenging to get the kids to identify their old thinking patterns or current thinking patterns, and then to be able to develop a new way to see themselves. It has been very successful. Probably the most rewarding part for me has been seeing the therapists change in how they do therapy. So we had hired many that have worked in a therapy program in some other agency before, and changing to have a short-term focus that's changing thinking patterns, not just behaviors, has been rewarding. Everybody had wonderful things to say about how they grew as therapists this year, let alone the stories we have to share about how the kids grew. So in your packet, this is also based for kids that are not needing long-term therapy, so that we're able to work with more students in the program. 64 of the kids we worked with were able to be discharged from this program last school year. So we are able to reach more kids, if that makes sense. Okay. Our outcomes. One of the ones that is super, super cool is that from the end of last school year to the beginning of this one, we had 100% staff retention. And that just speaks volumes. We're very proud of the supervision that we give our staff. It is approximately 2 hours a week, whether that's an individual or group, besides looking at records and phone calls and all the other things you do to supervise. When Dr. Doobie, who's one of the developmental pediatricians at Dayton Children's, looked at your enrollment numbers and then looked at kids we served, he loves math. So he said, Sue, you have to say this, that we reached 1 in every 16 students in Dayton Public Schools this last year. So that was his input. We have a Board of Trustees meeting tonight at Dayton Children's, so he wasn't able to attend this meeting to be able to share. One of the things that student resiliency coordinators also do is social needs referrals. So I call that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's hard to make changes if you don't have housing, or you're not sure where your food is at night or the next day, or you don't have supplies that you need. Among many other things. So we listed on our paper, we made 1,146 social service referrals. And for us, a referral means not just making it, but sticking with the family until that service is actually delivered. And then also helping families work out plans to maintain any kind of services so that they don't have things fall through the cracks again. In the, one of the numbers that you have on your paper, we remade 297 referrals for counseling services last year with the kids that we worked with. So I think that is huge. We served 453 families in the Student Resiliency Coordinator Program and 242 families in the therapy program. So we have reached quite a few. We have a outcome tool that we started using, and it's the BERS, the Behavioral Emotional Rating Scale. In working with that over the last 2 years, we noticed that many of the questions were a little more outdated, or with the pandemic were very hard for families or teachers to be able to fill in. Also, it is very long and time-consuming, but in working with Akron Children's and Dayton Children's psychologists, it was the closest tool we could find for measuring resiliency. Students, where families rated it and teachers rated it, we had a 7.5% improvement this last year on kids that were involved in the program. That doesn't sound very big, but many of the surveys we had to not count because too many questions were left blank, or that families didn't return it, or maybe the teachers didn't return it because a child changed different teachers and it was hard to track a child through. So we worked with researchers at Dayton Children's and have developed a new metric this year to be able to use. I've enclosed that in your packet so that you can see it, and we're not going to do the BERS anymore because it's not reflective of what's happening, and the new tool has more questions that are directly related to resiliency and specific to different kids' needs. For the cognitive therapy program that we are doing, the number of students showing improvement in at least one area as reported by the teacher or parent was 140, which is 82.5%. I keep forgetting to tell you to advance. Keep going, one more. Nope, back up. I guess I missed it. I left you out of this. Go ahead and back up. One more. There we go. At the bottom, it's 82.5%. And then the teachers reported improvement in one area, 64%. And the parents were also 64, 65 rounded up. And the students themselves reported a 77% improvement in at least one of the areas that they were working on in the school year. We do not have children miss their academic periods. We work around those academic periods, so we're doing lunch, we're available after school, before school, or whenever a teacher tells us this is a good time to be able to work with the students. So we're very respectful of the academic time that the kids need. So the next one, that shows the BERS. We pulled it out with IEP and without IEP, and we pulled it out by different schools, but that's the one with the 7.5% improvement. And then the next slide is a sample of the new tool we're using. So there are 7 characteristics, and we define areas under each one, and then the parents have one to fill in, the teachers have one, and students age 11 and up would have one to fill in. And then the next slide is what the therapists are using. So the target areas are decided upon in collaboration with the teacher, the student, and the parent, really working hard to make sure the parents have voice. We also have to work really hard with the thoughts, because that's hard for a teacher or parent to say, oops, we've made changes, unless the child's able to say, I really feel good about myself. That would be more of an obvious one that people would see. So some of our targets have the thought and the behavior hooked with them so that people can do the rating. And the next one, Kara can talk about this. Here you go.
So these are just examples of the feedback from the parents. So we send a survey out at the end of the year, ask for parents' feedback. Some examples are This program really helped my son. He faced some challenges this year, and especially when he got a new teacher in the middle of the year. His emotions can be difficult at times, but this program allowed him to work with someone who understood his needs. I hope more kids are able to participate and this program grows. I love the specialist my son worked with. She really cared about the kids, and you could tell by how she worked with them. Another example is Miss Kayla was amazing. She worked really hard with my daughter on her coping skills and checked in on her frequently at school. She was a second pair of eyes while my daughter was at school, lifting her up with encouragement, listening to her, and showering her with love. She helped my daughter so much, and I feel so blessed to have her in our lives. On the next slide, some school-based therapist comments. Twice I was referred to people who could help my grandson. The first was a place where he could get medication. The second was a counselor. They kept me informed and updated on how he was doing. She was excellent with him and got him to open up, which is hard for him. She kept me involved and kept me updated. She is great. So that's just some feedback from the parents on if their child was involved with the program and how they liked it and if they had any comments. Some other feedback are impact stories. So we asked our staff at the end of the year to write up examples and stories of how their students did in the program to really show the hard work that the students put in. So here is some examples for the student resiliency coordinators. An SRC worked with a third grader who was referred to the program due to challenging behaviors at school, such as fighting, cursing, and/or shutting down. When the SRC first met the student, he would refuse to talk. He was not able to identify how he was feeling, and he was not open to speaking with anyone. He would get very upset when he would hear teachers, staff discussing his behaviors, and this would set him off again to negative behaviors. With persistence from the SRC to continue to try to engage the student and offer him support, he eventually began to open up and began to learn how to identify his feelings. He shared about some difficulties at home and in the school setting and recognized the SRC as a safe person he could talk to when he was upset. Proof of this student making progress through the support of the SRC working with him on coping and control resiliency characteristics happened later in the school year when he was faced with the situation of being disciplined, and the conversation happened between the principal and teacher right in front of him. He was able to stand and hear what was being said, on his own his consequences without an outburst, and move on. The principal recognized the progress that the student had made in direct relation to working with the SRC through the school year. For a high school student, the SRC worked with a 15-year-old who had actively participated in the SRC program the previous school year, and he is affected by both mental health and behavioral issues that arise at home and at school. He was connected to outside counseling services, yet still struggled with his behaviors and needing the additional support of the SRC in the school to transition skills learned in outside counseling to the school and the community setting. The SRC and student worked on his connections with others, as well as building coping and control strategies to help him manage his emotions in a more constructive manner. Through working with the SRC and building a connection, he was able to talk through strategies he had learned to cool off versus engage in a fight. This student made significant strides in improving his behaviors and choices, resulting in no further fights and 0 suspensions. This was a major win, as he was most often would average 1 to 2 suspensions per month. A therapist working with a high schooler. She worked with a 12th grade student who was new to the school after a change in custody. She struggled with adjusting to the new school environment and with her familial relationships. She presented as mad at the world. She excelled academically, yet frequently would get into disagreements with teachers because she felt they were not doing the right thing. She would blow up on other students if they spoke about things that triggered her. Through cognitive behavioral therapy, we focused on the way these thoughts were making her feel. She was determined not to give someone a break because they didn't deserve it. We worked on how it feels to give people a break or the benefit of the doubt and the effect it has on our mood. We challenged thoughts to determine accuracy and possible assumptions versus alternative possibilities. She worked hard on this and was able to make great strides in improving her overall mood. She was able to manage 2 significant changes, graduating high school and a romantic relationship ending, with a positive attitude and the ability to recognize some of the benefits and lessons from those experiences. Those are just some examples. You'll have a couple more from both the therapist program and the student resiliency program.
So we just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to work in the schools. We really believe our program is making a difference. There's a lot of qualitative information. We hope to have better quantitative information next year, but we know that from talking with the students and the families and teachers that we are making a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. I wanted to say at first, I appreciate you both for coming out and sharing with us. Definitely know that our students and our community needs all the help that we can get, so I really appreciate that. This time, if there are any questions, comments from the board? Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you first for coming to share with us the work that is going on in our schools. I do have a few questions, if you don't mind. I know today we're being asked to vote on a $5 million agreement. What does that $5 million cover? Is it just staff?
So it covers the student resiliency coordinators, it covers the school-based therapists, it covers one of the managers and half of another one. And and their benefits, so it's salary and benefit. Dayton Children's covers the rest of the supervision staff and covers the computers and supplies and mileage and training costs and all that.
So based off the information you've given us, this $5 million is covering the salary for 36 individuals.
Just about, yep. And I don't know that that's what the budget is, but what we actually end up spending, because when you put in the budget, we have to put in midpoint or a little higher because we don't know the level of the staff and the degree and the year's experience, and so it doesn't always come up as high as what you put in the budget.
Okay.
I don't have the exact number we've spent to date on me. I'm sorry, I didn't think of that.
Second question, the slide with the bar charts with the average overall, can you explain what this is? It says average overall teacher score, all students, average overall teacher score, students with IEP. I'm not sure I understand this.
We serve kids, some of them have an IEP and some don't, and we were wondering if the IEP or developmental issues with a child would affect the outcomes of what we're doing with student resiliency coordinator. And so what this showed us is that it didn't affect that, so we won't pull that out separate. But the Burr scoring instrument has you do that and has you identify that. So we thought, well, there could be a correlation that we need to learn something from, and this didn't show that correlation.
Okay. Now, how are the students and families selected?
Okay, so the school
referred,
staff, the school staff do that, and we work with them. When they make the referral, we help them sort out whether it's therapy referral or a student resiliency coordinator. But the student resiliency coordinator program is more focused on the more challenging kids, where the therapy program was based to work on the less challenging kids that could make it in a short amount of therapy and not be in it year after year after year. But they could come in and then hit a developmental milestone a year or so later and need to come back in, but we're teaching them skills and thinking changes. So Kara and Libby work really close with the gatekeepers in each school to make sure everybody's okay with us working with the child.
Okay, Mr. President, if I may, 2 more questions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Would you happen to have the data of the gender and ethnicity of the students that are served, as well as the same data for the student resiliency coordinators?
Yes, I
and
do. I
therapists?
don't know if I brought that with me, and I can send that later, but we do have male, female, gender, all of that broken down.
And you have that for the staff as well?
No, I can,
Okay,
but I don't have that in a chart.
okay. I would definitely like
All of
to.
our staff right now are currently female. within public.
And do you know the ethnicity breakdown?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay,
Yeah, no.
okay.
Nope, I did not bring that. I can send that on to Dr. Lawley.
Okay, and then the last question, if I may, I've heard the impact stories from the parents, the teachers. Do you have any impact stories from the youth who were served?
Some of the stories are a combination of all three that are telling us, especially towards the end of the year. The kids have been able to say how they've improved and what they feel good. So those are a combination from us meeting with everybody.
So do you have the stories directly from the youth who were served? I'm interested in.
Right, no, we didn't write up anything
Okay.
directly from the kids. We
Okay.
just interviewed as they completed the outcome measure and what they felt had improved.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I did have a couple. So, and I know you talked about the referrals. Could you walk me through what is the turnaround time from when a referral was made until when a student is able to receive services?
I can speak on that. When a referral is made from the gatekeeper, first of all, has to approve it. So if it comes from a teacher, we go through gatekeeper. Typically, that's admin to say, yep, we agree that this kid's appropriate. The manager reviews it, typically 48 hours, and then you have to have the signed consent from the parent. So our staff, we say they have 48 hours to start calling the parent and making those outreach attempts. We sometimes will call parents for months, trying to get in contact with them to get their student signed up. So we have kind of a shutdown time, but we're not really abiding by that unless the caseload is full, where we say, we've been calling the parent for 2 to 3 months and they're not calling us back. We've sent letters home with the parents. The school's called and made all of these attempts. So sometimes it can happen the same week, and sometimes it takes a couple of months to get a kid involved.
So we will they have to call different days, different times of day, trying the evening. We work with the principal or any office staff that can tell us when it's better time to reach a family. And during COVID and sometimes after COVID, we will make the home visits with a staff if the parent's okay with that and the teacher tells us that's okay, to have consent signed at their house. We've also met parents in the parking lots, at playgrounds, at the public library, wherever the family's comfortable and wherever we can make it happen. But that's the biggest holdup, has been getting the consent.
To follow up with that, do you have numbers on how many students have been referred and because you couldn't get consent that they weren't able to receive services?
Yes, I do, but I didn't bring that number. Hang on a minute. I have all kinds of numbers here, but don't have that one. But we do have track of that. The number of referrals we have that we weren't able to close it because of the parents. I do have that number because we do track that.
Okay, and then a final follow-up with that. With the number of students that we have that go through homelessness, the students that we have that may live with a relative, an older brother, a sister, what does that process look like for getting them involved?
So the student needs to be 18 and they can sign their own consent. If not, then we work with whomever's the guardian of the student to be able to have the consent signed. We have worked with homeless students. We were able to work with a young lady our first year in the middle of COVID that wasn't coming to school, and the student resiliency coordinator was able to get her in the building, make sure she was getting a bus pass so she could get back and forth, and make sure that she was eating when she was at school and doing her schoolwork. So We work with whoever the guardian is and they consign. We just have to get a copy of the papers that say this person's legitimate.
And we can provide resources, even if, the guardian maybe is displaced or the custody is in limbo. We can provide resources. We've connected students with our kinship navigators at Dayton Children's to help. Maybe the guardian has passed away, so they don't have anyone who has custody of them. So help kind of moving that process along. We'll connect them with those resources.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Dr. Pickett?
My question is, the people that you're saying that you have some issues reaching out, the families, how much of that is a barrier, a language barrier?
I don't have a percentage, but we are asking or working with someone at the school who has the relationship or the language to be able to interact with them. We hired our first bilingual therapist that just started, and she's going to be working at the international school. But yes, I don't know how many fit that category. Sorry, I don't have that one. I was just thinking through case examples when you asked that. That is not one that pops up in my head as a huge one. It's more that a trust issue, that's why we use the school, or that sometimes they don't trust the school either and see us as part of the school. And so that's been a barrier for us, even though we wear our badge and say we're from Dayton Children's. Do you have any, I don't have any other examples.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I see there are none. Once again, I just want to say thank you for coming out and appreciate the work that you all do.
Thank you. And then we'll get you the data we owe you. I'll get it to Dr. Lawley.
Thank you. Dr. Lawley, your next presentation, please.
Our next presentation is a presentation to the Transportation Department, so I'll ask Dr. Burton to come forward and explain what it is, please.
Good evening, President Smith, Dr. Lally, Treasurer Abraham, board members. A couple months ago, the board approved a project that we were working on in transportation to improve our inventory and the parts center. As a result of that project, we have saved over $100,000, and I would like the Napa company to come and share with you the work that has been done and the amount of money that we've saved, and they have a check to present to the board.
My name is Dan Bigham. I'm with Genuine Parts Company Napa. We have a program where we come in essence, give you a Napa store. Part of that program is to purchase the inventory that's on hand. We went through, we completed the inventory that we found, got the costing associated with it. So today we'd like to present a check for $172,050 to the board for the purchase of the parts, and to pledge that we'll continue to save money any way we can for the Dayton Public Schools. So. Are there any questions at all?
Any questions, comments from the board?
Perfect.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Usually I'm asking for money, we'll get it.
We give you some back today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that deserves another round of applause. Moving on, do we have any bargaining units here to speak?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Keith Stuyvesant. I'm with OPSE, Ohio Association of Public School Employees. I represent 7 locals here at Dayton Public. I'm going to go ahead and list them. The psychologists, the interpreters, OT, PT, assistant mental health, mechanics, clerical, drivers, and the paraprofessionals. I always say 7, but never list them, so I wanted to list all 7 tonight. I know usually when I'm here, I have a concern about one of those groups that I just mentioned. However, that's not the case tonight. I'm actually here to share some positive good news. We all agree that no child should go hungry, so OPSE wanted to do something about that, so we started a program called OMAD, which stands for OPSE Making a Difference. OMAD is a charitable organization. It's established by the OPSE AFSCME Executive Board, and since the spring of 2014, OMAD has raised more than $150,000 from union leaders, members, staff of OPSE, and vendors. And we've fed about 20,000 students across the state of Ohio. So this year, I'm happy to announce that OMAD has selected Dayton Public Schools, and we plan to feed over 2,000 students, 2,689 to be exact. The enrollment keeps fluctuating. Dr. Law's been working with us that. With the help of Local 643's president, Kenny Jones, we've selected 6 elementary schools. Obviously, we'd like to select more, but we got to do with what we can. So 6 elementary schools, and they are Eastmont, Ruskin, Westwood, Valerie, Kaiser, and Roosevelt. Now, Dr. Lawley and Sam Hurwitz have been so kind to work with us on making this happen as well, because we need to have a site where we have all this food delivered. So we're working on that. Matter of fact, Sam and I have been back there working on it now. And then all that food's delivered to one site, hopefully around October 6th. Our union members, I know the 627 drivers and the paraprofessionals will donate their time, go to that site, and bag all this food up in totes. So when October 13th is the day that we worked it out with Principal Sampson at Roosevelt. Times to be determined yet, because we want to make sure we don't interfere with any instructional time, lunch time, and all that. So we want to make sure we work with each school on that regard. But alongside with Dr. Lawley, if her schedule permits, the executive director of OPSE, Western District Board members, and union members, we'd like to invite any of you to come to that too, when we hand out those totes. We will make sure the other 5 schools get their totes to hand out to the children so they can take them home as well. I will say this is the most OMAD has ever fed in one district. So I again want to thank Dr. Lawley and Mr. Hurwitz for working with us on getting this logistically. That's the hardest part, is getting the logistics worked out. And so far, we've been really working well together to get this done. So once again, October 13th will be the day that we do it at Roosevelt. I hope that you guys can make it out and help us distribute those totes. It's nice. I've done it now. We've done it in East Cleveland, Columbus City, Lima. So it's nice. It's a good thing to do when these kids grab it's breakfast items, it's lunch items for the next couple of days. So hopefully we'll see you there, and we will continue to get it worked out. So nothing, no concerns tonight. It's nice to come down and have a positive thing instead of something. So hope to see you there in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Those last 2 speakers, it's going to be a little bit hard to follow that positive nose. Tough act to follow. President Smith, Vice President Reinhardt, board members, Superintendent Lawley, Treasurer Braha, DPS staff and families. Good evening. My name is Neil Mahoney, and I am the president of the Dayton Education Association. As you are aware, this school year began with multiple vacancies in teaching positions. And as I speak, many are still not filled. There are also multiple education support positions that are currently not filled. When you combine this with the fact that a record number of teachers have left the district, you can see the overwhelming workload that is being placed on our current staff. Our teachers show up every day to provide the students of Dayton Public Schools the best possible education, and our teachers also spend countless hours planning, preparing, and delivering their instructions so that the students have the best opportunity to learn. Yet every day, more and more is being asked of them. More duties, more meetings, more coverage, plain and simple, more. We as professionals know the difficult position the district is currently in, as evident by the continuous list of resignations you receive. However, not to be included in the process to address and solve these issues is disheartening. We as a district not only have to attract new staff, but we need to work harder to maintain our current staff. The over 900 members of the Dayton Education Association stand united and committed to recruiting and retaining the best teachers for our students, to maintaining reasonable class size and equitable opportunities for all students. DEA members are also committed to bargaining for the learning conditions Dayton students need to succeed in our current negotiations with the district. The DEA will never back down from a fight for Dayton students. The mission is just too important, especially after stalled negotiations for the DEA's last contract forced our members to authorize a 10-day strike notice to get talks back on track. The DEA continues to bargain in good faith for a new contract with the district that will best serve the needs of our students and educators moving forward. We remain hopeful an agreement can be reached soon. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other units? Madam, are there any other bargaining units here to speak? Hmm? Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's me. I signed up for the first time to address you. I'm with a nonprofit organization.
Or is it a school union? Oh, okay. Okay, it's here now. All right. If we do not have that, then we will move to the hearing of the public. Just have to complete a form and submit it to our PIO. When called upon, identify yourself, state your name, address, and school district in which you reside, state your reason for addressing the board, address the board as a whole and not individual board members. Materials for distribution can be handed to the treasurer. Limit remarks to 3 minutes, and it is inappropriate to address any matter involving pending disputes, grievances under a labor agreement, disciplinary action involving an employee or student, ongoing labor negotiations, concerns or matters that have already been settled, and/or any matter which, because of its nature, is deemed appropriate to be discussed in executive session. Madam Treasurer, our speakers, please.
Okay. Shalan Shafiq. Shalan Shafiq. Okay. Celestine Scott Matthews. Okay. Jess McMillan.
Hello, my name is Jess McMillan. I live in South Park. Emerson is the closest elementary school to me. I am with the Mosaic Institute of Greater Dayton, a nonprofit organization that goes directly into the community pockets of Dayton and surrounding areas to engage with the people who live there to create collaborative art. I founded the Mosaic Institute 7 years in Miamisburg. Since then, we have filled the city with Miamisburg with public art. We have completed a mosaic in every public school in Miamisburg City. We have moved to Dayton and created large-scale public art installed in the sidewalk that is interactive public games. We engaged over 1,000 people in 2019 at Art in the City, creating one single mosaic in one night. And then 22 days later, we set up at the Gem City Shine event to engage our citizens through Mosaic as a means of healing from the Oregon District shooting, where they wrote messages to the victims and families of the victims. That piece hangs in City Hall as a time capsule to what we went through during that time. In 1 month, in October, I will enter 11 medical facilities across the Miami Valley to engage with 13,000 premier employees over 14 days as a means of healing from COVID trauma. While I dedicate my life to building this very important and unique legacy for the city of Dayton and surrounding area, It is important that an entire generation of our children learn what a mosaic is, why, and that they are the physical representation of the unity in our city. And so I have given you the marketing that I give to the public schools in our area. These mosaics are usually funded by the PTA or PTO of the schools. They're incredible programs. They engage every single student, staff member, administration, everyone who works in the school comes into the art room, places a piece in the mosaic, and then the mosaic is finished and hangs in the school as a physical representation of their teamwork and coming together. So it is my intention this November to launch the first stage of our Giving Tuesday campaign, where we will partner with 9 companies, organizations, corporations who have a strong ability to raise $3,000 for 9 public schools, Dayton Public Schools. We will repeat this campaign for the next 3 years, and we will go into 9 Dayton Public Schools and complete a mosaic with all of the children in those schools. I am here to tell you my intention and my dream for this project, how I'm going to get it done, and to ask for your approval and support as I go about doing this for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming out and sharing with us. Thank you so much. Madam Treasurer?
Tamara Bennett. Tamara Bennett. Alice Pennington. Alice Pennington. Jamie Ryan.
My name is Jamie Ryan. I live at 2137 East 5th Street. Good evening, board members, treasurer, Superintendent Lally. Firstly, I am uncertain as to how contract negotiations go. I don't know the role of the board in these negotiations. I don't know what is being offered nor what is being requested. What I do know is that our teachers don't have a contract, and that is shameful. I'm here to say that our teachers need a fair contract. Secondly, I'm curious about the change in the athletic policy and the implementation of the athletic academic intervention program. I'm wondering if there has been an increase in student athletes, especially those that are now eligible to play with a lower GPA. Are we seeing more athletes turn out? Are the study tables being attended? How is that going? Thirdly, looking at the HR document, I'm wondering what information is being gathered from those leaving the district. Especially, I'm wondering about the bus drivers and the paraprofessionals. I know in the past we've talked about exit interviews with teachers. I just wasn't sure if it was going, if those occur with everyone leaving. So it would be interesting if we have what data we have for that, and what if there's anything within the district's control that we can mitigate. So those were the things that I was bringing tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming out. Madam Treasurer?
That concludes tonight's hearing of the public.
Thank you. Once again, appreciate everyone, as always, for coming out and speaking. We'll move into superintendent's recommendations.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the Human Resources Agenda.
I'd like to move to accept superintendent recommendation A.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I wanted to catch you before you accept the motion. Item 6, I would like to pull that to vote on it separately, please.
Okay. So we'll pull item 6. And now we'll move to accept superintendent's recommendation A minus item 6. Move, do we have a second?
I mean, I'll second it, or did you have a second?
No, Karen didn't want a second, so
A
we'll move it. We'll move it to Mr. Lacy. Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions on the motion?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Superintendent, are there any updates to this from last week that we should be aware of?
The updates are highlighted in green. They are added from the time that we had the review session. They're there for your review. Many of them are IEP writers to support our intervention specialists, and you'll see some band supplemental contracts for support with our band program.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. If someone, I'm trying to understand this, number 38, it's saying that this person was a teacher, but now is going to a long-term sub. Can you explain how does that happen?
Chief Harmon?
Yes, sir, I certainly can speak to that, and this individual has the opportunity to go the other direction as well. This particular case is a licensure issue. Started down the path of licensure. That's still progressing, and we have to have a full teacher licensure to be paid at full teacher licensure pay rate. And if that gets to the finish line, then we'll go back the other direction to full teacher pay rate, if that makes sense.
So this licensure issue was just discovered because he was voted on, this person was voted on previous meeting to be a teacher, correct?
Correct, and not just discovered, but the time to get everything completed we're beyond that point. And so we actually have a deadline with all the folks who are in the process of getting their license. Maybe even a better example might be a brand new college graduate, which is through no fault of their own, a new teacher college graduate who, they're waiting on test results, for example. We won't continue to pay somebody at the teacher salary rate of their years of service. This gentleman, I think, I believe it's step 5, until that we have the proper licensure in place. And then again, if they get it back, then we can revert that the other direction as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Goodwin?
Can you explain to me what SEC support is and how individuals qualify for supplemental pay for that?
That is person, we were without someone in the student enrollment center for several months, and this person stepped up and provided that leadership, that management floor support. So we just wanted to offer a small stipend to say thank you to her for stepping up, doing her job, and doing the job of the floor manager until Ms. Stokes came on board as the director.
Is there a process? Because were there other individuals? I mean, I just like to see that it's a fair process if other individuals stepped up as well. How are you identifying, I guess is my question, individuals who should receive this when they do more than what is their portion of the work?
I'll ask Dr. Burton to come up and explain why Ms. Hollis is the one that stepped up.
Yes, Mrs. Hollis was selected by the former lead of the department who left us in December. As identified, I asked her to identify who would be the most likely candidate to fill in until we were able to identify her replacement. Many of the individuals in that department are very new to the department as well. The combination of her experience and the recommendation is the reason why she was selected to fill the position until we were able to hire Mrs. Stokes.
Okay. If other individuals have done additional work, is there a way for them to report that to you all and also be compensated?
If it's noticeable additional work, absolutely, we do try to compensate anyone who steps up and helps out during a time when we have a vacancy like that.
Okay. And I believe last week I asked about an update on our winter sports, and I believe we were supposed to get that from athletics. Did we get an update on?
Yes,
And
we
what is
have
that update?
The update is for winter sports, they're looking to fill the position for Belmont 7th and 8th grade girls basketball. They've identified potential candidates for that. Stivers 7th and 8th grade boys basketball, Wagaman 7th grade boys basketball, and 7th and 8th grade girls basketball. Wright Brothers 8th grade boys basketball have all have an identified candidate, and then 7th and 8th grade girls basketball are all still open at this point. All the fall sports hiring is complete. The one that remained unfilled was Dunbar boys soccer. They were able to find golf coaches for multiple buildings thanks to 2 coaches who rotated back and forth between 2 buildings. And actually, Meadowdale will have 2 boys compete with a sectional tournament later this month in golf. Winter sports for Belmont Wrestling, they're interviewing a candidate. They interviewed a candidate today. Dunbar Bowling and Wrestling, Stivers Indoor Track. Stivers Indoor Track has actually an identified candidate, and they're looking for Dunbar Bowling and Wrestling. They've hired swim coaches for Ponence and Stivers, bowling coaches for Ponence and Stivers, and they're continuing to work on those to find candidates for those open positions.
And with the wrestling, is that also with the female new program that we included this year? Or is that only looking for male wrestling coaches?
I cannot address that, but I'll find out for you if that's, I'm assuming right now that it's since it doesn't identify that it's for males, but let me find out for sure.
Okay, and then my final question, I believe last week I also asked for an update on the tutoring positions for the study tables.
Yes, those interviews have been scheduled for this week. Chief Harmon, do you have anything additional other than the fact that interviews are taking place? Okay.
Okay, do you know roughly about how many positions we need to fill in our schools with those?
I believe every building has the opportunity for 3. Some of the buildings filled a couple of theirs already with those coordinators positions that we talked about at Athletic Council. So I believe that we're probably looking at anywhere from 6 to 9 still. Is that correct, do you think? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are none, may we have a vote? Voting on human resources out without the one that Board Member Sampson.
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. And now with that, I would like to move to accept Superintendent Recommendation, Human Resources, line 6.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second. Are there any questions on the motion?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to state why I requested this to be removed separately. Last week, I asked for data as it relates to I was informed, or we were informed, that programming had been changed. I did not get that data. And since then, I've also learned that this individual, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, we paid for his master's degree, tuition reimbursement. And also just, I have a relative that was a student of his. And to hear some of the students in the last week, this is a loss to them. This gentleman has taken them to 2 nationals in 2019, 2021. And last year they came in 10th place. And I'm really wrestling with a reduction in force versus finding him a position within the district. So I needed to state why I wanted it to be pulled. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Again, the reason for, and I apologize that the information didn't get to you. I'll make sure that it does get to the whole board this week. I thought that it did, but apparently that was a gap. The person doesn't have another licensure to be able to be moved into another position, and that's the reason for the reduction in force.
Any other questions? Dr. Goodwin?
What license is the individual missing?
He has I believe it's a media, Chief Harmon, can you pull that up quickly? It's a media license to teach CTE programming in the media department.
Yes, sir.
Also, if someone can, last week there was, it was stated that there was a reduction, there was a low number in this class. From my understanding, there was 38 students enrolled last year in this program, and this year's 31. So there was a reduction of force for 7 students, and there's an incoming freshman class of about 200, 250 who have not chosen a pathway yet for next year.
I believe that there were 34 students for 2 teachers who teach 2 periods each per day. So that's 4 periods with 38 students, 34 students who are divided among them for that particular program area.
And it was 38 last year, correct?
34, 38, something like that, yes.
And so this year.
For 2 full-time teachers.
And what's the difference from last year to this year when we had 2 full-time teachers?
The one teacher can do 30 students, 15 students per period for the 2 periods, 15 or more. Typically, our CTE classes are usually about 20 to 22 students per. So to have 2 full-time teachers in a program area that was going to stay as it was last year, the minimum number of students that you should probably have is 80 students total for the 2 teachers.
So I guess my question, Dr. Lally, is if the numbers were low last year, why is it that this year, all of a sudden, this is an issue? Like if there were 38 students last year and there's 34 students this year, we went a whole year, and this is the first time that there has been a consideration of a reduction in force because of the low numbers.
Actually, it was considered last spring. It's just now being put on the agenda for some reason. We worked with the media department and talked about the upgrades that needed to happen in the media program for the district, and that's when the actual RIF occurred was last spring, and it's just now being boarded for some reason, and I can't answer why from the HR perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Goodwin?
In regards to the Pathway program, can you just tell me a little bit about what recruitment efforts were put out to try to increase the student numbers in that pathway?
In that pathway, the teachers typically recruit their own numbers. So they go out and they do presentations. So for all of our 8th graders, what we also do is we do like an 8th grade visitation day where before COVID, we took them all to Sinclair so they could visit each of the pathways and see what the pathways were. After we came back last year, they actually did it in a different way where they visited the actual, they visited schools and saw saw what was at Ponance, saw what was at Meadowdale High School to determine whether or not they wanted to actually apply there. We do that for all 8th graders, and we're doing the same thing this fall for all of our 8th graders as well, so they can see the pathways. And then the teachers actually recruit within the building by, there's a career program, a career, I believe it's called Career Pathways Program in each of our buildings where they talk about it, and especially at Ponance, they work through their freshman and sophomore year. They take that class one of those years and learn about the different pathways that are available, because they might have changed their mind from the time they applied to the time that they actually start that pathway in their 10th, 11th grade years.
Okay, I have 2 questions now, more. That one sparked another. When we see that a program is decreasing in enrollment in students, is there any, like as an admin staff or anything like that, is there something that you're going to start, do we start to help these teachers when we're seeing that they're not able to bring in those numbers along to support these type of programs?
We try to encourage people to do different things to invite students in to see the program. One of the things that we actually started with our PIO department is we now have students that are hosting a program that we've just started. It'll be rolling out in the next week or so, but it is a different type of program than what has been offered at Ponence in the past in this because it is being basically modernized. The teachers, the actual person who needs to teach it has to have that licensure in order to do it.
Are there any opportunities to add this type of class to one of our other schools that may want that opportunity but don't have the teacher with it at all, specifically our traditional high schools?
Not without the purchase of much equipment and supplies. And again, the program is a program that's been changed over. So it's not the same program that this particular teacher was teaching in the past.
Okay. And what, could those students, similar how we send kids to Sinclair, could they, if other kids wanted to take this program and their schedules allowed it, could they just be bused to Ponence?
They have to be a member, they have to be a student enrolled at Ponence to do this. They can, however, if there's a similar program at Sinclair, they could take CCP and do that pathway there.
Is that enrolled at Ponence, is that our rule, or is that some type of rule tied to a program funding source that we have?
They have to be enrolled at Ponence because of the seats that we have at Ponence, and they actually have to have been placed at Ponence for their high school enrollment.
So that's our rule?
That's a CTE rule. You start a program, you go through the pathway.
Okay, and Madam Treasurer, my question's for you. If we did remove this, or if we kept this position, what would it do to our budget? Or is the position budgeted for?
Yeah,
Okay,
it will increase or decrease.
all right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Lally, you made a statement, and I'm trying to understand, and I'm recalling the family member who attends Ponence, who's in this department. They apparently met with the CTE director, and statements were made about modernizing this program. And they were told that there are no jobs in video or media. If that statement was made to young people, that is an inaccurate statement. For this to be a content creator generation, video is the #1 thing that they need to understand. So when you make the statement about modernizing, what does modernizing look like that is not being done now with the courses or curriculum that they have?
I don't know about this statement being made. I would have to ask that of the person that was in the meeting. But we moved into more social media content, more of the types of things that we do with our PIO office. Those were things that helped modernize this program. But again, the licensure for the program is the issue with this particular teacher.
But this teacher had video, correct?
This
Video
teacher,
licensure?
this teacher had the license to teach the old curriculum content, yes.
So is there a new curriculum?
I believe there is. And Dr. Rammel would be the one to ask that question, and I can have her contact you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I did. In hearing the discussion, a few questions, Dr. Lally. Looking at not just Ponence, but across the district, and it brings to mind even the conversation we just had in athletic advisory about some of the things that we're talking about at like Welcome Stadium, looking at the possibility of putting new scoreboards there and things. And one of the things that came up was not having the capacity at some of our places to do some of these things. And I know that with some of our programs, I think it might have been at Belmont, the firefighter program, where we've been able to open that up to students outside of just Belmont. Is there any way, knowing that there's some of those things, that we could be creative in finding ways to kind of find something? And I think it goes back to what Dr. Goodwine spoke of just earlier this year, about finding ways to kind of get a hook into kids, finding something that these kids might like, and that might be that outlet there. with this new curriculum and not being able to talk to Ms. Rammel about that, but is there something there with some of the things that we're looking at doing in the future that has to do with video? Is there something that would fit into this person's licensure?
I can't really answer that because it's a CTE pathway, and CTE pathways have very specific classes that are approved by the state of Ohio. And those are put in place in March, and that's when actually this teacher was actually talked to and the program was actually discussed, was in March, as to the changes that needed to happen. And then the review of the licensure is what caused the RIF to take place, because he didn't have the licensure for the course changes that were put in place in the CTE for the state of Ohio programming.
Dr. Goodwine?
Can you tell me at Ponitz how many long-term subs we have in positions there? Or is this whole school completely without subs holding positions that require licenses?
I can ask Chief Harmon to tell you that, but each person who comes in from the field, we actually support them with tuition reimbursement for them to get their CTE licensure. So if you are someone who's coming in from the nursing field and you don't have a teaching license, you go to the Ohio State University or Bowling Green State University and you take the CTE classes that provide a license for you to be able to teach the CTE pathway courses. So that's a process in and of itself to become licensed for your CTE programming.
Yeah, I understand that part. My
Oh, I'm
question
sorry.
is more so, do we have individuals that aren't licensed serving in licensed roles right now?
All of our long-term substitutes are licensed substitutes?
No, licensed in the CTE pathway curriculum.
Do we have any CTE long-term subs is the question.
Okay, and do we have long-term subs serving in positions that usually require a person with a CTE license at Ponitz?
Looking to see the specific CTE classes. Sorry, Alex told me I need to go to the microphone. The specific CTE classes at that building, looking at our long-terms in that building. The number is 8. Your first question was how many? The number is 8. There are
I'm
none
sorry, Chief, 8 what?
long-term subs. That was your first question.
In the total
In
building?
that building. There are none that I see, scroll through it twice, that are teaching a career tech education class. They might be teaching, for example, just a traditional English, high school English class, like English 9 maybe. Or there's a reading lab that's being taught by a long-term substitute, but not like a specialized career tech pathway class.
Do we have any at Meadowdale? Same question.
We do not have any long-term subs that are teaching a career tech education class at Meadowdale. There are long-term subs at Meadowdale, but not teaching career tech education.
Thank you.
Mr. Sampson?
Mr. President, this is my last question. The more we have this conversation, the more questions I have, but this is going to be my last question. Back in March, when this conversation was taking place with this teacher, was this teacher given the opportunity to get the license that was needed since there was this curriculum change that I'm really curious to see? Was he given an opportunity to get this new improved license that was needed for the change in the CTE program?
I can't answer that. I wasn't in the conversation with him.
Yeah, I was in the displacement meeting with this individual and a few others. The other individuals had flexibility in their license, and they were able to select a different position that we were able to move them into. I can't speak to the curricular changes. I'm not a part of the curriculum department, but the individual had between the end, well, it was approximately March when that meeting took place with union leadership present as well, until, you know, the end of the school year, or, you know, even the beginning of the school year, to obtain any kind of different licensure. Although I couldn't speak to his individual effort. I don't know if he tried to take any additional classes, but his license is very, very specific, which I sent to you. And so that particular license just doesn't have a lot of flexibility in it.
So I guess the question still is, I said that was my last question. The question still is that if there was a change in the curriculum and a staff member had a license, do they have the opportunity to get what is needed to remain with this new change?
I mean, I think in this example, there's a couple things that are happening at the same time.
Okay.
You have the total student enrollment that really only called for one teacher in that program. And then separately, I mean, the board is very well aware that, you know, we have need for teachers. And so if this individual were able to obtain additional licensure, additional flexibility, I would love to bring them back. I don't know if they've obtained employment elsewhere or not, but it's a limit of that particular license.
I just received a text message from Dr. Rammel, and she said that this particular teacher was offered the position in Career Connections, and he was not interested in teaching that course for us.
That's okay. That's good information. That's
And
still
that-
not answering my question, but I
Yeah,
got
and
it.
I
Thank
think-
you.
Thank you to Dr. Rammel for sharing that information as well, but specifically the Career Connections, when it's a middle school class, actually can be taught by any license.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Abstain.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
No.
Ms. Wiegany,
Abstain.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
No.
Mr. Lacy.
No.
3 noes, 2 abstain, and 2 yeses.
Thank you. Next recommendation, Dr. Lally.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the contracts that are listed. Oh, I'm sorry, no, I apologize, I skipped over one. Recommend approval of the Human Resources Agenda for DEA after July 10th.
Move to accept superintendent's recommendation.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions?
Got one.
Dr. Goodwin.
On line 11, which side of the building is that on? And has that been replaced, that first grade class been replaced with another first grade teacher?
Chief Harmon, that's at the International School.
Yes. The question was?
Has that person been replaced?
And which side? Was it on the international side or was it on the traditional side? Okay, and was the position, has it been replaced? Okay, is a long-term sub serving in it or anything? Oh, so what's happening with those kids?
How many students are actually enrolled in that classroom?
That's fine. That's fine. That makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions? Did you want to wait for the answer to your question, Dr. Goodwin?
Not really, because that person resigned, so.
Okay.
I'm just hoping there is a plan to let those children not go unserved for longer than necessary, which more than a day is longer than necessary, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
No.
Ms. Reinhardt,
No.
Mr. Sampson,
No.
Ms. Wiegany,
No.
Dr. Pickett,
No.
Dr. Goodwin,
No.
Mr. Lacy.
No.
7 no.
Thank you. Next recommendation, Superintendent.
I'd like to recommend the approval of the contracts and agreements that are listed.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions on the motion? Dr. Goodwin?
Yes, for the fence replacement at Rosa Parks, what area is that fence actually going to be placed around? Like, what part of the football field are we talking about?
I'll ask Chief Hurwitz to come up and explain.
So from my understanding, the fence is going to go from the outside of the track, probably about 20 feet around it, around the entire track.
Okay, so people can still drive down on, from the sidewalk to the fence part of it. That grass will still be unsecured.
So they'll be able to drive and park. They shouldn't really be driving in the grass at all, because we have that additional parking lot there that we put in a few years ago. The hope is that we do not have people driving, but there will be no vehicle access at all inside. Are you asking essentially if you can hop the curb and park on the grass?
They already can do that. I
Right,
saw it this
right.
past weekend.
Yeah, okay.
Also, it's not related to that, but it is related to Rosa Park. The football field itself, I do notice that Pee Wee teams are utilizing it. Are there plans to actually put stripes on that field for those community teams to be able to utilize? Because right now, they're just using a blank grass.
That field should actually be lined, so that's something.
It is not lined.
It is not lined. I will take care of that. That field is scheduled to be lined. So that's something on our department that we need to follow up with and take care of. But that's supposed to be striped.
Okay, and that's my last question for you. Dr. Lally, with the Miami Valley Child Development Center, can you just explain a little bit what this contract entails?
Yes, they actually run our Head Start program at Rosa Parks. So on one side of the building, Miami Valley Child Development Center runs that program inside our building, and then on the other side of Rosa Parks is the Dayton Public Schools preschool program. So this money is from preschool, public school preschool grants, and it's a per pupil amount for the entire year for them to manage those children, the cost for those children in their program. We get a monthly count from them of students that are Dayton Public School students that are enrolled, and then that's how we pay for the invoices.
And what's the difference between their program and our program at Rosa Parks?
Head Start has very different requirements than public school preschool like we run. So there are different requirements for curriculum, different requirements for activities that the students are doing. The preschool classrooms look very similar, but there are some very specific requirements for Head Start as well as the financial situation of the parent.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Next recommendation, please.
Recommend the approval of the following compensation agreements for the Delco TIF and the Delco CRA agreements.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Do we have any questions on the motion? Mr. Lacy.
Okay, I didn't like the original agreement, but the original agreement was approved before I got on the board. The changes, I appreciate the attempt to get me the changes, but they do fall a little short. You guys did get me the red line, and that's good, but most of the red line really just says that the major changes, the compensation agreement changes from Schedule A to Schedule B, or Attachment A to Attachment B, neither of which are attached. So, yeah, I can't. I'm in that I would not have voted. I'm not going to go into an argument unless somebody wants to, an argument about tax abatements, which I think a school district needs to give a very narrow view of, and in this one, I don't think it passes that the muster. And in that, this is simply a change of one that's already been approved. I mean, I don't know if this change makes it functional. If that's the case, then I'm voting no. So basically, that's where I stand on this. And I just thought I'd explain my no vote. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Any other questions?
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin.
Where are, because I even pulled up the November 16th, 2021, and as Mr. Board Member Lacy stated, the C attachments aren't attached. Where are these attachments? Anybody who can answer that. Where are the attachments?
Dr. Goodwin, I think we need to go back and look at the board whenever the board approved it, because I'm making the guess that they are there on that in particular. Difficult to answer that, since these are the things that they sent over to us for the approval before it goes to the city.
That is on the November business meeting, because I did look that up before I stated this in 2021. And even on that one, it's the November 16th, and even in that board approval, there aren't any attachments listed on there. So it seems like an incomplete document. And if I may, just for the general public, can you explain what the actual compensation to the school district is in exchange for, I believe it is a 30-year TIF and a 15-year CRA?
The additional compensation, they were donating $5,000 to pay for a driver's license for our CTE programs that require driver's license. There were, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, President Smith and Ms. Wickanier and Treasurer, they also agreed to some internships, I believe, and a reduced rate at the hotel that's going to be built as part of this compensation agreement. Along with that, 25% of the tax dollars that are coming in. Did I miss anything? Board Member Wickanier or President Smith?
No, I don't think so. I believe we could probably locate any of that stuff through, the city was working with us at the time, and then also the people at Crawford Hoying. So Board Member Lacy, I'm sure the documents exist. Perhaps maybe Sharice can even help too if there are no attachments into how we locate those.
Yeah, I'm interested too if any of that is in writing or if that was all verbal, because even on tonight's agreements, I don't see any of that anywhere in either of the documents that are before us. And that's super concerning if that's what we agreed to, that we got, that there's nowhere for anyone, not even board members, to pull right now to explain that. So I see that as a problem. I don't know if anybody else does. And if it even is a signed writing somewhere that explains, again, those benefits that are supposed to come to our programs.
I know there's a piece around compensation on page 4.
Which dot, are you in the TIF or CRA?
CRA. Page 4, where it has the CTE Pathway Program donation, discount on room bookings, and also meet annually at the school district to discuss how its annual grant and how it can be applied in the calendar year to make the most significant impact given the needs of the school district in that year. That's on the bottom of page 4 and the top of page 5 in the CRA document.
I'm actually getting the error from board docs right now. So, yeah, we must have crashed it.
Now I'm getting the error.
Yeah.
It's open. The one I have open before everything crashed, it says it's our First Amendment and restated school compensation agreement. Or the one you're clicking, is it the TIF that's crashing?
No, board docs, period.
My CR still opens.
Okay, there it goes, back up now. And on this, Dr. Lally, it does say that this was supposed to commence by December 2021. Have we received that first round of
Yeah,
anything?
that's what the correction was to be, that they wanted it to be in, I believe it ended up being December 2022, and they wanted to reach, I think it said something to $1 million amount, and they needed it to say $2 million in order to qualify for the financing piece. So those were the two changes that came across from them before.
Still can't get it to open. I'm still getting an error message.
What, page 4?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mr. Lacy.
Page 4.
No, I asked if it was page 4, and that's where I am. I can see it. I can see under no other compensation.
Can you explain me again? You said, even in this ERA, it says, oh, never mind. I'm good.
All right. Any other questions? If there are none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
No.
Mr. Lacy,
No.
5 yeses, 2 no.
Thank you. Your next recommendation, Dr. Lally?
Next recommendation is recommend the approval of the resolution to create the student success coach and their salary schedule.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Any questions on the motion? I see none. May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Next recommendation, please, Dr. Lally.
Recommend the approval of the resolution for an out-of-country field trip for Cyber School for the Arts. This is a trip to Canada.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions on the motion? May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Next recommendation, please.
Recommend the approval of the MOU for AFSCME Operations Local 101.
I move to accept Superintendent's recommendation H. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Next recommendation, Dr. Lally?
Next recommendation is approval of the MOU for Edgemont Community Center, and this is with the Office of Cultural Engagement.
I move to accept superintendent recommendation I. Do we have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
That concludes your recommendations, Dr. Lally?
It does, President Smith, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Treasurer, your recommendations, please. Sorry.
I recommend the approval of amended certificate of estimated resources for 2023 as reviewed last week.
I move to accept Treasurer's recommendation A. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on the motion? None, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Next recommendation, Madam Treasurer?
I recommend the approval of supplemental appropriation for fiscal year 2023 as reviewed last week.
Move to accept Treasurer's recommendation B. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Your next recommendation, please.
I recommend approval of the monthly financial report for August 2022 as reviewed by the Finance Committee last Thursday.
I move to accept Treasurer's recommendation C. Do we have a second?
I second the motion, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moved and second. Do we have any questions on the motion? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Next recommendation, please.
I recommend approval of the official minutes for August 9, 2022, August 11, August 13, August 16, and August 26.
Move to accept Treasurer's recommendation D. Do I have a second?
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions on the motion? Seeing there are none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Next recommendation, please.
I recommend approval of the donations for September 2022 as reviewed last week.
Move to accept Treasurer recommendation E. Do we have a second?
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions on the motion? As always, I want to thank all of our donors. See no questions. May we have a vote, Madam Treasurer?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Next recommendation, please, Madam Treasurer.
I recommend the approval of the following purchase requisitions as reviewed last Tuesday.
Move to accept Treasurer's recommendation F. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do we have any questions on the motion?
I have a comment.
Dr. Goodwin?
On the shared resources, I did get an update from our attorney regarding the initial contract, that the term of it is, we have to finish October by the terms of our contract, and we don't have an early termination clause in it. I do have a question if this purchase requisition is within that contract, or is it something additional outside of our existing contract? If either of you guys can let me know.
It is within that contract.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
No.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
6 yeses, 1 no.
Thank you. And your next recommendation, Madam Treasurer?
I recommend the approval of the following then and now as reviewed last week.
Move to accept Treasurer's recommendation G.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mr.
Whatever.
Lacy. Do we have any questions? If not, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
This includes your recommendations, Madam Treasurer.
Yes.
Thank you. As we move next, I see that we have board member travel and expenses to approve, but nothing is coming up. Dr. Lally, is there anything that should be under there?
I don't have anything that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I also have a blank screen.
Okay. Next, I'll move down to Mr. Lacy.
I'd like to quickly comment. I mean, I'd like to congratulate the performance index results for 21-22. 16 of our schools had double-digit improvement in their performance index scores. That includes almost all of our elementary schools. So I'd like to congratulate them. I'd like to congratulate Kemp for 21% improvement, or 21-point improvement in their performance index scores. And the district overall for a double-digit improvement, 10.5%, or 10.5 points improved. That's the third highest amongst the Big Eight. So congratulations to everyone. I'll also mention that last Thursday we went over the financial statements and found them to be in good order. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question back in old business
Okay.
that I would like, since it's already been voted, I would like to motion to reconsider. And I will share the rationale. Item number 35 in HR. And item number 44, based on the vote that was done, this individual was terminated at 35, and then he's rehired at 44 in the same position. And so with the vote, we're giving this person a job back, and so I just need to know, is that correct? And if not, I would like to offer a motion to reconsider.
I believe that he should not be hired back, so you likely need a motion to reconsider.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the HR vote.
Okay. It's been moved and second.
Just for those two numbers, 35, well, just for 44.
Second for whatever.
Any questions on the motion?
Is that correct?
Item 35 and.
You said what?
35 and 44.
You said the dates matter?
Yes, the contract was changed on 8/29, line 44.
Okay.
And then line 35 is after that, termination. So the termination came second.
What, do you have a date on the termination?
9/8.
9/8.
There should be no, they're in the right order.
So we're good?
We're good.
Okay, so you're saying we're good with the vote?
Yes, sir.
All right.
We got a, we still got a motion on the floor, right?
There's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we have to vote. Or take it off.
No, you
Call.
have to remove your motion. that's all.
Oh, Mr. President, I'd like to amend my motion to reconsider.
Okay. You have a second?
Second.
Do we have to vote on your motion now, sir?
What did you amend it to? You have to
No.
state that.
To take out.
Yeah, Sturdy said he took it off.
Take it
All
off.
right, just say it.
Then
Yeah,
we're
so
good.
there's no need for a vote.
All right, then we're good. Back to you, Mr. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to say thank you to Ms. McMillan, I believe that's her name. I am truly interested to seeing how we could, I like this idea of the school mosaics. So I'm just interested to see if we could, as a district partner with this nonprofit, to get our young people to explore the mosaic mural. Also, I want to say thank you to everyone who spoke this evening from the public. I greatly appreciate it. I do want to say congratulations to someone we voted on, Ms. Boone, the new Director of Health Services. Congratulations to her. And last, Mr. President, I want to send a shout out all the way to Belhaven, Principal Kelly. This is her first year as the principal. She was featured today on WDTN, and it talked about how the students are greeted with superheroes, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, Iron Man, and then her favorite quote was from Black Panther that stated, "Today we don't fight for one life, we fight for all of them." And so I do want to shout out Belhaven and the work that Principal Kelly is doing. And I would ask that if we could get the clip, that we could post it on our Facebook page and wherever. I just want to shout out, it was a great, great piece. And to hear the students talk about superheroes and how they liked it and their interpretation, it was absolutely a great, great clip on WDTN. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pickett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, the ESL committee will be meeting tomorrow, so I don't have any reports on that. And the policy committee canceled the meeting this month. We didn't have any policies to discuss. Last week, I voted no to hire Mr. Lawrence as business manager. And today, I want to explain to the public why I voted the way I did. The backstory, as explained in social media, states that several board members and other public officials want David Lawrence to take over as superintendent when Dr. Lawley's contract is up. This has been a topic of conversation between some board members and certain members of the larger community. In January of 2020, the name David Lawrence was mentioned to me as a candidate for the position of superintendent. The issue I have is not about those conversations or even about the candidate himself. My issue is the lack of transparency in the process. What I strongly disagree with was the way the hiring took place. I and many others have said from the beginning that we need a national search for the best possible superintendent because children and staff deserve the absolute best. But instead of looking nationwide, members of the board have handpicked who they want as the next leader of DPS. And we are putting him in the business manager position to pave the way. I will quote a few public comments to provide context on how members of the public see the lack of transparency. One comment said, some board members decided to set up a workaround and create the position of business manager who would get to report directly to the board. It is true, and it is not acceptable. Another one read, as I was bemoaning the speed on which the position had been created under the cover of darkness, when not everyone could be there, it was pointed out to me that it was tactically brilliant. And when you wait until your opposition is out of town, you call a special meeting within 36 or so hours, and bam, mission accomplished. End of quote. A person described David Lawrence as smart, innovative, and brash. He may make a brilliant superintendent. The person goes on to say, if this hire comes to pass right now, it is a bad move. The public perception is that this move will not be a positive one because of the murky way Mr. Lawrence's hiring was handled. It was also said that waiting a little would allow the board to have 6 months of complete transparency in the process to erase the bad taste by the disrespect to Dayton citizens in their blatant violation of sunshine laws over the last month. The people of Dayton deserve better. The superintendent deserves better, and Mr. Lawrence deserved to come into the district with complete buy-in from the entire board. I want to send an apology to the citizens of Dayton for the lack of transparency. I want to offer Dr. Lawley an apology for the blatant disrespect and lack of communication between this board and you. And I want to offer an apology to Mr. Lawrence, who deserved to be brought onto the team through a transparent and fair process. I want to make clear that the issue here was not Mr. Lawrence. The issue here is the lack of transparency in how the board made this hire and the intentions behind the move. The actions of the board undermine the accomplishments we usually do not celebrate. We are so preoccupied with dealings of a corporation that some seem not to pay attention to the wonderful accomplishments of this district. There are many issues that create chaos around us, and yes, transportation is a mess. It is a national mess. Look at what Dayton Public Schools have accomplished since 2017. I really would like to talk a little bit about this. We have earned a D from this Ohio State Report Card in 2019, and we earned an equivalent to a D, a 2 stars, in the Ohio State Report Card in 2022 for the 2021-2022 school year. And we did this during a COVID recovery when many districts were failing. MAP results for grade 12 through 3 for 21 and 22 indicate that students have exceeded expected growth. We earn higher than 2020 and 2021 scores, and they are actually equal or not better to 2019 scores. We don't have any scores for the 2020 Springs. We have recognition by the Ohio Department of Education on significant recovery from the pandemic. We were actually the first district to be featured on their video series. We have increased career technical pathways from 13 to 24. We opened a new career technical high school in 2019, which is now full with enrollment of 545 students. Graduation rate for CTE students is 91.9%. Over 1,561 college credits were earned during the 2021-2022 school year. 193 students were enrolled in CCP in 2021 and 2022, which was 34 more students than the year before. All curriculum courses of study have been updated and aligned with Ohio standards. New materials have been purchased over the past 5 years to update resources for staff, district, and upgraded all technology and added clever touches to classrooms to better facilitate instruction. Music, art, and physical education are taught in each elementary school, unlike in 2016 and before when only 2 of 3 were available to students. All elementary schools and 2 middle schools have received Save the Music grants to support purchase of instruments. Bands are available in all middle schools and in 4 high schools. Neighborhood school centers have been refocused truly to serve the students and their families. Neighborhood school centers have been increased from 6 to 11. 21st century school grants are in majority of the neighborhood school centers, except for the new ones. Positive School Climate Awards from Ohio departments. We got the awards from Positive School Climate from Ohio Department of Education. We have internships and job fairs regularly held over the last 2 years in non-CTE schools. Partnerships with Miami UD, Wright State, Central State, Sinclair to create a new cooperative teacher training academy at Meadowdale. We have partnerships with Miami to have more DPS students attend Oxford campus. 2 per high school will be identified and mentored through high school with vision, et cetera, to Miami, and then mentored on campuses when they enroll. The University of Cincinnati IT program will open for students at Thurgood Marshall as part of the STEM work over there. Additionally, STEM training, consulting occurring at Thurgood will continue to move to true STEM school. Montessori schools are now a real school Montessori, or Montessori school. International school opened and is running successfully with over 380 students. Several grants for work in Northwest Dayton, like Together for Students, Blue Meridian, the Bill and Melinda Gates. We had the Accelerated ED Planning Grant. The College Promise numbers are increasing to 16 this year for our students, going up to 1 or 2 in the previous years. I can continue going on and on. But even though we have a long way to go towards having a better district for our children, a district that our children deserve, we are moving in the right direction. Some have said that we need to totally scrap our plans and start over. I hope that the leaders who are coming back to DPS can respect and continue the incredible work that is happening. And I hope that they will build on what is working. And most of all, I hope that the board can commit to conducting a national search for the superintendent. Our kids deserve better, and our community deserves to be involved in the process. When I was in Mexico, I lost friends who were assassinated for pushing open elections and transparency. Javier Obando and Roman Gil. It would be easy to go with the crowd and approve this hire, but in the memory of those who I lost and their lives, I want to push for democracy and fairness. And I cannot vote yes on what looks like a clear nepotism, and I hope this clarifies my position. That's all I have to say today, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. It says on here you also have a couple second readings for policy. Or should those be, I think those would be second readings.
Inasmuch as the Board of Education is committed to the continual updating of its policies, rules and regulations, manuals, and the committee, which was appointed, has been working towards that goal. The following is brought at this time for second reading in compliance with board file. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the City of Dayton, of the Dayton City School District, Montgomery County, Ohio, hereby accept and adopts the following policies that have been codified for inclusion in the Handbook of Policies, Rules, and Regulations. File BDDB, Agenda Format, GECB, Admission of Non-Resident Students, and JO, Students' Records.
Okay. So would you want the other two together, Dr. Goodwin?
Let's do them all separate. I just vote for them all. I have to pull them all to be second, separate.
Okay. I will move to accept file BDDB, agenda format. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, move Dr. Pickett, if you wanted to move those.
Am I supposed to?
You could, I didn't want
No,
to
you
step
go
in.
ahead.
Okay. And there's a second. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
No?
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
No.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
No.
Mr. Lacy.
No.
4 noes and 3 yeses.
Next would be a move to approve file JECB, admission of non-resident students. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion? See none, may we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes?
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
And finally, I move to accept file JO, student records. Do we have a second?
Second.
Been moved and second. Are there any questions on the motion? See there are none. May we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Thank you. Move down to Vice President Reiner.
Excuse me. Last month, I was hoping sincerely that my fellow board members would put in place a policy and a board code of ethics to prevent sexual misconduct among board members at the expense of politics and personal relationships. They did not. No one should ever have to endure sexual harassment or unwanted advances while working to serve these children in this district. In March, I myself experienced an event that was witnessed and documented that highlighted the need for this policy, the need for this protection, and the need for channels for reporting events such as these. But we have no policy, we have no protection, and we have no channels for reporting. This DPS has an HR department. This board does not have an HR department. Our board legal counsel was unable to assist me or guide me toward reporting this event because we do not have a policy in place. The one thing I could do at that point was make sure this never happens to anybody ever again. And I could support an updated sexual harassment policy that would protect board members in the future. It had precedent in districts across Ohio and would hold board members to the same standards we expect of our employees right now. This was the work that failed last month. For months, I have endured retaliation, repeated instances of unprofessional behavior, intimidation, bullying, and a hostile work environment. My ability to serve on this board has been impeded and infringed, and it has been implied directly and indirectly that I have an agenda. Let me be clear that that policy was not retroactive, that it was meant to protect board members in the future. And the only agenda I have is to continue serving in the best interests of students and families in this district. Optimistically, I had hoped that my board members would fall on the right side of history and choose to protect board members in the future. Unfortunately, that was not the outcome. And the behavior and reaction
that I've had since introducing that policy has frankly, since it was straightforward and justified, the behavior was disturbing. Despite the hostile nature and the pressure that I've experienced since introducing the policy, I will continue serving this district in the manner that I best can. As a member of the policy committee, I'm committed to reintroducing the policy in the future to protect the safety of board members and ensure that no action like this ever happens on a board. As elected officials, we have the responsibility to set an example for students and the community. And its actions in this experience have been embarrassingly opposite. That is all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Wick-Gagne.
Thank you, President Smith. I really hope that our community can see that our new board, this new board that took place in January, is demanding a different type of collaboration, information, just working together in new and different ways. This is by no means in any way disrespectful of any of the work that we have done. This is intent. I think that this intentionality has been meant to build on the work that has been done. In that board dynamic and in my 5 years serving this board, I have seen different leadership styles. And when I speak to leadership styles, I speak as a professional, and I recognize that within leadership styles, we as individuals have a cultural competency around leadership and what that looks like. I can no longer assume that my way is always the right way. Cultural competency requires, and it's important that within that cultural competency that I believe that all white and non-black board members be intentionally reflective of what leadership style looks like. It is in that lens that I recognize that there is racialized context around some of these very deep issues that we have been dealing with, a lot of trauma that this board has been experienced as a result of accusations. I see the importance of developing policy when harm has occurred, absolutely. But I think it's important, it's extremely important that we be considerate of how policy has always and can continually developed to affect people of color disproportionately. The complexities of what are playing out here is important work. And this is not to deny the truth of anybody's experience, but it is disturbing and telling that there has been no acknowledgement of the racialized play that is occurring here in some of these dynamics. I have made it my clear desire that I wanted to support healing and repair, but not towards a political agenda
and not towards punitive actions. And I do believe that the assertions made this evening are punitive and personal, and I feel deeply about this situation. I feel as deeply, this is not to throw any the serious work of sexual harassment away, because this situation is not either or. It is all of it. It's incumbent to all of us to continue to work towards progress in this regard. I think that all of our efforts should always reflect dignity, respect, and compassion, and I don't, that's important work for me. I think that we are lacking to see the full breadth of some of the work that is playing out here, and I really want our board to continue on a path of growth. I'd also like to address the accusations of lack of transparency with regard to what I believe to be a very exciting addition to our staff in terms of opportunity that we have and we can bring to our students and community at Dayton Public Schools. And again, I want to reiterate, this excitement does not downplay or negate or any of the work that our wonderful superintendent has done. I highly respect and regard our superintendent. I always have. I have communicated openly. I have communicated openly with all of our board team who are willing to talk and listen to me and entertain my thought process. I have been accused of being a creative thinker by our superintendent. It is in that very creativity that I saw this opportunity for advocacy of this position in a positive way for our district. I meant nothing subversive. I meant nothing to be any more than transparent in my advocacy to support this position and this individual as well. So I hope again that our community can really see some of this positive work that is being done. And this is hard work. This is very difficult. These are difficult conversations to have. I want us to continue to work together collaboratively to make this district a better place. And so, towards that regard, I continue my work with Welcome Stadium, which again, I am so deeply connected to the possibilities that it presents for our Dayton Public School kids and our community. There's wonderful work going on out there. Thank you to our leadership team who continue to navigate all of this new opportunity for us. It's a pleasure working with all of you, and I hope that you will consider all of the things that I shared with you this evening. It's a pleasure to be of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dr. Goodwine.
I know we having this really deep night up here. I wasn't prepared to go into deep speech today. It's not Black History Month or Women's History Month, so I didn't have that much for you guys. But it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and it was an amazing festival this past weekend. Hopefully you guys attended and had some good times. I want to shout out Belhaven because I also saw the news clipping of it, and this is one of those moments I'm excited to give kudos to Dr. Liley on her shaking up the principals, even though initially I criticized, but I was wrong.
I told you.
You told me. You told me. You shook it up, and I mean, we have, in addition to Principal Kelly there, I believe Fairview, I mean, I've heard very positive things at all of our schools, and the only thing I'll say about Belhaven is they need some DC heroes in there. They got a lot of Marvel going on, and the flash should be on the window somewhere out there. I'm just saying. So I'm excited to see that change that I was initially not acceptance of is really working in a positive way for this district, and it is bringing some stability to some areas that, I mean, this is the year, and I'm excited that it's happening this year, and we got more to grow on. I will say, I do want to address some things said up here, because, I mean, it's only so many times that people can accuse you of stuff and you not respond, but everyone else is having to say things. Let me go ahead and give it at the gander. I want to say I appreciate you, Ms. Ryan, because even though you talk about us on Facebook, you come down here and you talk to us. And I encourage any person that wants to talk to any of the 7 individuals up here. Facebook is not a real source for me. It is a place where people go to put stuff and you vent. And that's okay, because it is your private platform to say whatever you want. If you ever want to know about the inner workings of not only the school board or legislation or anything like that, it's 7 people up here who can help you out and talk to you about it. Everything that's happened in the past, we've done everything that was statutorily by the book. And I am excited that not only were we able to bring a new innovation, I'm hoping that it does the same thing and shocks this district in the way that, again, I can admit where I was apprehensive about the principal changes, but it's working out. I'm hopeful that this change, actually, it's not even a change, it's an addition in trying to build something new that's never been done, is going to do great stuff for us as well. We have one of the most brilliant minds to the left of me, Dr. Lally, doing some great things and continuing to shape some things up. And we are adding on another strong player that I can't wait to see what happens. I haven't been on this board longer than 9 months, so I don't know about people talking about the next superintendent. I do always take offense when people jump ahead to the end of a story instead of going through a story to see what happens. And I'll tell you guys, initially, I am opposed to a national search when there are so many local individuals in this community that hold superintendent's license and that should be given a shot before we go out of the region. And it is my hope that when we get to that point and we start having those conversations, first, that they don't just end with the 7 people up here, because the 7 people up here, I don't think many people have small children in school anymore, and the effects are going to last longer. I hope not only are individuals who don't put flattering things online, I hope you go beyond that and you go have a conversation. It's 7 different personalities up here. Talk to somebody. You don't have to talk to all of us. You should be able to connect with at least 2 or 3 of us and share your ideas. And then individuals that we maybe we're not aware of whenever we get to that point, because again, that's jumping to the end of some things that haven't even came to fruition yet. I'm not done with our superintendent. She's solid to me right now. She's doing a good job. I have no idea what the future holds. Again, I'm in month 9 of me being on the board. I don't even know what that process looks like, but it sounds like at least one member on my board has already put some things out there, and I can't agree to those things. I can't agree to that point because we haven't gotten to that part of the story yet. And when we get there, I'm sure you all will be included, because that is a major decision to make. And honestly, I don't think Dr. Lally is done with us yet. And when she is done with us, I hope she tells us before you guys find out and post it on Facebook. So we at least got some firsthand knowledge on what's going on there. In addition to that, I did get some good updates on the study tables, to some comments you made, Ms. Ryan. I would invite, and I'm gonna even ask them if they could include you on the athletic committee. I don't even know, it's a long name. It's the committee for athletics that handles it. I don't know the name of it. What's the name, Will?
Athletic Advisory Council.
Way too many words. That committee right there, right? And at that study table, the updates that were provided were that the individuals, every school at this point has at least launched study tables. And I think this process is really showing just some of the gaps that are really in making sure that it is more than just a process in name only. Identified schools some schools have identified kids who want to take the morning session, but they've run into barriers of actually being able to know how those kids get into school, who's going to be with those kids. So they're working through those, which we're also working on learning that a barrier doesn't mean you stop the process. It means it's something we didn't account for, and we have to figure out how do we still get to that end point, knowing that this exists now, how we work through that. So we have some schools that have that going. We have other schools that are still working to get this team concept, this synergy concept of we're all in every aspect together. Athletics and academics are one and the same while you're in this district. And we're really working on getting our coaches to be a part of that process and encourage that. I've heard that there are a couple schools, I think Belmont for sure, every athlete in the building goes to study table. Doesn't matter your grade or not, but they are trying to push a culture where they help each other, and they're all starting right there. And then I have other schools that are having trouble getting their kids from the time the bell ring to study table. So that group is working through how to move through those processes. And then there was actually some interesting data pointed out, because again, I want to reiterate, us changing the GPA the sole intent wasn't so more people can play. The intent was to ensure that at-risk children, we can grab them more and get them into something so they will keep showing up every day. And they will keep trying, because even if they go from a 58 to a 63, that's improvement. That 63 can go to a 65, and at some point it'll get to a 70 when they make those little incremental changes. But we learned, I think it was about, between our middle school and our high schools, there are about 500 kids. It was either 300 or 500. I'm gonna just go with the higher number at this point, because I don't remember. There are about 500 kids that they have at least one D on their report card to more than one F. And I was like, that's the group that we're trying to not lose. Those kids, we're trying to figure out how do we connect with that population of students and get them to stay with us and not give up on us or not give up on their education at that point. We have not resolved that answer. I encourage any person that wants to be involved with helping us really, because we're in an unfamiliar space, because if we had the solution to it in 2022, we still wouldn't be talking about study tables. We would be on a program that just runs smoothly. We're not there yet, and we may not be seeing something, but the athletic committee meets once a month. It is an open meeting, just like this meeting. Any of you all can come. If you do need that information, shoot me an email, and I'll get it over to the athletic director. Shoot Dr. Lally or her team an email. They will get you that invite, but that question is we're still trying to work through it and figure that. But we have closed a couple gaps with our student reporting and our hack system. Those are now on the same page. Before, those weren't on the same page. That was a big thing that I'm making sure. We're still working to really get these people involved on that one. I think other than that, I do want to encourage you guys, if you have not been out to the stadium to support any of our teams, they are having a tough season, all of them, every single one. But just seeing fans in the audience wearing their colors is a big supporter, and it really helps build up that sense of belonging to someone. The reverse effect is also there when you're out there, you're at home, and the away team brings far more fans. So please come out and support no matter what the sport. I think I want to give kudos to the athletic department. They have done a great job of connecting not only our major sports, but our minor sports via the YouTube page. You now get to see every athletic event that either occurs in our gymnasium or Welcome Stadium. Big thing, check out the volleyball teams. I mean, Stivers is a team of professionals. So I saw some things and I'm like, man, I can't believe that talent. I can't wait to see Stivers versus Belmont, because I think that's going to be great. But I've seen some really good matchups in other teams as well. I did have one thing to discuss with the board. Now that I'm at the end, I had to get all that out before I forgot it, guys. So I wanted to talk to the board, which I don't believe this is a policy or a resolution. It's kind of more of what are your thoughts and if this is something we should send a directive down to start considering. When it comes to the student athletic events and the fact that we charge students right now to go to them, we charge students, I think, about $3. We don't even charge our students for lunches. We're in a district where poverty is very high, and we are putting an extra burden on individuals that could prevent them from being able to enjoy the high school experience. It is my opinion, and I've seen in other districts, not necessarily in Ohio, that we remove those fees and allow students to enter, especially the stadium, at no cost with their student IDs. We just approved a purchase requisition for IDs to be created. And I'm just interested on people's thoughts. I mean, I even talked to athletics with some of the like basketball season is an area that they would have to think a little bit more of what that means, because that capacity is kind of filled a little quicker. But I just would love for kids to be able to come out and be able to get into the game and to be able to help them be at these events. So I'm interested in anybody's ideas on if that's something, are you opposed to it? Y'all got some thoughts on it? Y'all just sitting there ready to go home? Y'all just say something, anything you got for us.
Favor. I think that it bears, some consideration and deeper thought with athletic department, via how you control it and manage it in a way. Maybe free passes that are given at schools and there's a certain amount. I mean, I think there has to be some tools to manage it and what that looks like, but I certainly think that our kids should be allowed to get into, I can tell you, I've been in a lot of these sporting events, and the number of kids that, our visiting teams will bring versus our kids is, makes me sad. So anything that we can do to encourage deeper community around those activities, because, oftentimes it's not about the win or the lose, but the support and the community that is built around those very important activities. So I'm in full support of it. I just think it needs a little, some work around what that looks like, and consideration of also our SRO, how everybody's at the table, all the stakeholders. So thank you.
I also want to say, I hear you teachers, I heard y'all out there, y'all had some big horns. You guys were definitely loud, and I couldn't even focus on the Dayton children's person, and I feel a little bad about that, but you guys, I mean, we hear you, and we are really trying to get this thing to the finish point to where we all walk away knowing that we got a good relationship moving forward. That's it for me. And then, again, if anyone, Dr. Lally, if we can just work on what we need to do to remove that cost for students, I mean, that would be great for them to be able to be out. Thank you. That's all I got.
Treasurer Abraha.
Okay. As you know, Treasurer's Office always busy reporting and calculating all the financials. So this month, we are working on the financial expenditures report for to be sent to ODE for all our grants. That's the requirements, grant funds. Another one, what we're doing, auditors are in auditing our financials for 2022 school year. So we're working with the auditors. We are working in converting our financials from the cash basis. We work on cash basis the whole year, and we convert it to accrual, and we put it into our CAFR, which is our combined financial report. That's what we're doing right now. And in the good note, we have settled for our taxes for the second half, and our taxes came up to be comparable to last year and compared to our estimated revenues too. This is a good note. That's it for me.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Dr. Lally.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first thing I'd like to do is congratulate the students who graduated. Tonight, they made it to the finish line after a long summer of working hard to get to their diploma, and I know their families are proud of them, and Dayton Public Schools is proud of them as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple of things that Mr. Lacey and Dr. Pickett talked about. Our test results for the Ohio State test came back, and we are a 2-star. And that is similar to what we were in 2019. And when you look at some of the improvements that were made in several of our buildings, there's congratulations that goes to the teaching staff, the administrative team, people that really put in the effort to do the work that we determined we needed to do. And it's just been an effort that's been just something that we need to celebrate across the board with the results that came in. Are we there yet? No, we're not there yet. We still have a lot of work to do. We have a summer slide gap that we're looking at with our MAP scores, but our teachers tend to recognize that. They tend to pull together and pull that up and out. But having an OST result that gets us back to where we were in 2019 when we had that momentum for the first time in all those years to have a D instead of an F as a district, that momentum is there. And just want to thank everybody who pushed that forward and made sure that our students achieved last year, and I know that they're continuing to do that this year. I attended a national session with Learn to Earn Dayton, and we talked about and we're working through proposals for those students that are not CTE students and those students that are not CCP students, but students that need to have some sort of pathway. And we're working on something that we're calling the 13th year. So if we can get those students moving forward and picking up some credits along the way so that they're eligible to move forward into a career pathway, we're working on that. Kettering School District and Dayton Public are pilots in that process, in that planning process. So it was very much a think tank that we worked through, and there were at least 10 other states that were there with their people talking and sharing and trying to come up with some ideas for what we're doing. But through Learn to Earn Dayton, we are moving that forward and making sure that we have something available, hopefully within the next year for Dayton Public students to engage in, and those students that aren't necessarily CCP or CTE in our district, and be able to serve them better than just a straight high school diploma. So we're working on that. I started the leadership lunches that I had begun before COVID hit, and have 2 of them this week. Our students are very, very bright students. They're very engaging students. They're very thoughtful students, and I truly enjoy going out and speaking with them and hearing their ideas, and also hearing what's on their minds about different things that are happening in the schools, and things that they hope that we can change, things that they would like to see expanded. So it's always really fun to be there with them for that lunchtime and to have that conversation with them. So I have 2 this week, had 1 last week and 2 this week, and then I'll finish the rest of them, I believe it's next week. And then I have a great announcement. It's taken me 5 years to get to this point, but I have an announcement that I'm thrilled to make, and I'm hopeful, and no, I'm not retiring tonight, Dr. Goodwine, just in case you were wondering. We are having our first all-city marching band perform Friday night at our football game. And they're going to be very good. They practiced today at Welcome Stadium, and they practice again on Thursday at Welcome Stadium, and it's going to be a real treat to finally have a marching band back on Welcome Stadium's field that belongs to Dayton Public Schools. Took me a long time to get to that point. That was a goal that I had when I first got here. Couldn't understand why we did not have marching bands, but we'll have at least an all-city marching band made up of a couple of our high schools, and you'll notice which high schools they are on Friday night, but they'll be performing, and I'm so excited about that for the students, and I'm excited about that for Dayton Public Schools. And then something on a serious note, our scores would have been much higher on the Ohio State report card if our chronic absenteeism rate was not 51.9%. We have students that miss randomly 2 or 3 times a week, and we have no rhyme or reason for why that's happening. But our results were reduced. You have to take a reduction because that's now counted against you in the state of Ohio. So we had to take a reduction. So several of our schools academically achieved 4 out of 5 stars. And because of chronic absenteeism in their building, were deducted down to 2 or 3 stars. So that's very, very important that we stress to all of our students and to their parents that we have to have students here in school. We have to have them here, not just because of the state report card, but because of the learning that they're missing. So as a community, we need to surround those families, find out why there is so much chronic absenteeism, and help our kids get back into school on a regular basis so that not only can they excel, but the district itself can excel and say, our students are here, they're learning, they're in front of their teachers, and they're working hard to do what they should be doing. So we need to work on that chronic absenteeism as a team, as a district. With that, Mr. President, I don't want to end on a negative note, so I'll say our DPS band will be performing Friday night, so come and watch it perform. It'll be a great night, so thank you, sir.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say I take everything seriously that was said up here today. I've been up here for a while. I also want to say that as a group, we are, as Dr. Goodwine said, we're 7 different people. And we are 7 different people elected by the public, and this is our workplace. This is when we come together. This is when we do these things. We may not always get along with what we're doing. We may not always agree. As you saw today, we don't always vote the same. This is where we are, and we are pretty much all open. If you want to reach out, you can reach out and really speak. I really do value the voices that come here. And as we said, I do value what was said up here today, and I look forward to moving forward with those things. I think there are things that we have to do as a district. I appreciate all of the stats that were raised up today because those stories don't get told enough. And those stories don't get told enough no matter what's going on. Those stories don't get overshadowed because of a vote. Those stories get overshadowed because it's a story about positivity in a district where people don't expect us to do anything positive. We talked about a 2-star rating. People don't understand that does not mean we have 2-star teachers, 2-star families, 2-star students. It means that we are in a system that is governed by poverty. And we are in a system that we know that our state funding model has already been proved at the state's highest court to be unconstitutional, and we still go through those things. We know that that is something that we are up against, and so I thank everybody in this district that works to overcome all of the challenges that you do not see in districts that you see at the top of these listings. The things that we see in districts such as ours, and the Trotwoods, and the Clevelands, and the Cincinnatis, and Columbuses, you do not see them in the suburbs. And that is something that extends out. And so I appreciate that. I heard a lot of honking as well going on outside, and as a product of DPS, I truly appreciate all of not only our teachers, but all of our staff. I started school in this district in 1989, and I just aged myself. And I know as a child, I remember my first sports memory was the 1990 Reds World Series. I do not know that lineup, but I did know Miss Makey, Miss Hill, Mr. Gilligan, Miss Sosrich, Miss Keller, Miss Weimer, Miss Morris, who was still in our district, Miss McLarty. Those are the people that I knew. And I could rattle them off for days because those are the people that raised me in this district. So I want to take a moment to say I thank them. Mr. Mahoney, I'm glad you came out. It's hard to call you Mr. Mahoney because it's always been Coach Mahoney. And it's been hard to get through this day because it's my late father's birthday. And I think besides him, Mr. Mahoney was probably the hardest person I had on me coming up in high school. So appreciate that. I also want to share that I had my first experience helping a family get into the international school, and it was a beautiful moment. I coach a soccer team, and one of our players from Columbia who has been here, he's been in the district, he had a family member move up, and he came out to practice with him, and I just came up, say, hey, how you doing? Stone-faced. And at that moment, it hit me in that real time of children coming into our community, 14 years old, nobody they know, and to be able to have a fellow board member, be able to reach out to them in their language and to speak to them, and within 15 minutes, have them reassured that they would be able to get their child that they're caring for into a school was a beautiful thing. So I look forward to that and just having them excited about that. With the questions that were asked around the GPA, I know one data point that was raised is right now inside of that area that are now eligible, we have, I want to say, between around 150 new kids just in that area alone. I think that's a thing that Dr. Goodwine touched on, so I won't go too far deep into it. But with the children that we have in our district, it's my thinking that I would much rather have them in the care of one of our coaches than in the streets. And as a former coach, as our coach was, he could probably attest as well, the numbers of kids that were just at Meadowdale alone when I was there, if that report card came out and they were ineligible, there were children we never saw at that school again. Never. And so being able to try to find a way to keep them in is a beautiful thing. Another thing that has happened, we had recently the 1972 Meadowdale football city championship team. Some members of that group came to a game at Welcome Stadium. They were celebrating their 50th anniversary of winning the first city championship at Meadowdale. It was a beautiful moment. They shared pictures, they shared stories. You know, I got to go through yearbooks with them. And as we build this stadium and build up these programs, I think it's incumbent of us to realize that there are people in this district that came from this district that no longer live here in Dayton. They don't have children here. They don't have grandchildren here in Dayton. They don't have people inside of our schools. But what they have is a memory that these people sat there and shared of what they did at a school on Williamson Avenue 50 years ago. And it made them come out and put money into the pockets of DPS schools. And so remembering that you have people out there, you know, if you grew up and you went to Lincoln and then you went to McFarland and then you went to Patterson, none of your schools are around anymore. So it is incumbent of us to create those kind of opportunities to give back and celebrate the history and help them help us as we all want to move forward. I think that is about it. I think that we've been having some good things with males and females of color. I want to shout out them. I want to shout out just all the buildings. It's been a lot of good things coming out of our buildings in this first month. So let's keep it up. I appreciate everybody that came out once again today. And let's just keep moving. We're 1 month in. It's a long year. Got a good superintendent here with us to keep it going. She's going to be playing in the band. Oh, she thinks I'm playing. She's about to get out there. I'll be with you. But let's just keep it going, and let's support each other. And like Ms. Witt-Gagne said, we do want to move things in creative ways, collaborative ways. Sometimes it may be new, sometimes it may be scary, but we see the good, and we want to keep building on the good. And I think the only way we keep doing that is coming up with ways to work together and come up with new ideas as these 7 individuals come together here at this dais and try to move this district forward and support everybody in this city of Dayton. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
There is no questions. Can we have a vote?
President Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiegany,
Yes.
Dr. Pickett,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
7 yeses.
Adjourned.